This week on our Destination Spotlight, we're going to be talking about French Meadows Reservoir. It's one of my absolute favorite places to go trout fishing. It's about 36 miles northeast of the town of Forest Hill, and it's about 9 miles from the Sierra Nevada crest. The lake sits at 5,200 feet. It's lined with conifers all around the shoreline. The lake itself is about 3 miles long, about a half mile wide, and it has about 7 miles of shoreline, something like that. Maximum depth, I've seen water out there that's about 100 feet deep. Most of the lake is 40 to 50 feet deep. And if you just take a casual look at the lake, there's not a lot there in terms of features. It looks like an oval-shaped lake. There's a very short river arm, and the other end is dominated by the dam. But if you take a closer look, particularly when the water level's down, what you'll see is that on the north side of the lake, there are a lot of steep gullies that lead into the water, and those provide a bunch of underwater structure. On the south side of the lake, there's some gullies and there's some deep water, but there's big stump fields, big flats, and those areas provide just a lot of cover and produce a lot of aquatic insect hatches and stuff like that. The north side of the lake, well, it's also dotted with stumps, but there's also other structural features out there. There's rock piles, reefs, rock faces, points that come out, submerged points that come out and then drop right into the main river channel. The lake is formed on the North Fork of the American River, so where the points approach that river channel, there's often steep drop-offs. Now, the lake has both rainbow and brown trout in it. I've had very good luck catching both species. Rainbows, they range up to about 18 inches. The lake is fairly heavily planted with rainbows, but a lot of those fish turn into holdovers. You could tell when you catch them. They've got clean tails. You can tell that they've been in the lake for a while and they're growing. Last year, I had my best little shot of rainbow trout fishing at the lake ever. I caught 4 trout. The smallest one was 16 inches. The biggest one was just short of 19 inches. I caught those fish all in about a half an hour, trolling speedy shiners. And let's kind of talk about where you find a trout. I catch a lot of trout at French Meadows right out in open water over the main channel, or I find them adjacent to really steep banks. Those 4 big rainbows I caught last August, they were sitting on a really steep bank in about 30 feet of water that, the bank continued to drop down into 80 feet, and they were only maybe 100 feet off the shore. So they were 30 feet deep, about 100 feet off the shore. I could see stumps and stuff dotting that steep bank, and I could see the arches of suspended fish just off the bottom. I trolled through there with a downrigger at 30 feet, which seemed to be the main level the fish were holding at, with a copper speedy shiner. It was really windy. I was maintaining about 3 miles an hour, and I caught those fish really fast, and I ended up releasing them all. So they're still in there. In terms of brown trout, I've caught brown trout out in the middle of the lake, near no structure whatsoever, but most of the brown trout I've caught have been in the upper reaches of the lake, near the stumps, near the rock features. At the upper end, they're submerged right now. The lake level's up. But there's some big rock piles that when the lake level's down, they form islands. And, you got to be careful around them because they'll grab your downrigger balls because they come out of really deep water and they come up very abruptly. So when you go there in like September, October, you'll see them. They look like islands. Those areas hold a lot of browns. They like to lurk around those rock piles. They like to hang out around those stumps. Every brown I've ever kept and cleaned at French Meadows Reservoir was packed with crawfish. And I think that's a clue as to why they're hanging out around that kind of structure. I think they're looking to ambush, crawdads and stuff like that, and that's why they like to hang out there. Most of the browns I've caught at the lake have been anywhere from 14 to 20 inches long. I've caught 3 browns that were right at 5 pounds. I caught all 3 of those actually while bank fishing on the backside of the lake, soaking inflated worms. And that's how I fished the lake for years. I didn't start trolling the lake until about 5 years ago. So, who knows? But that's how I caught all my big browns there. I haven't caught a really big one from the kayak yet. I got pictures a few years ago of a 12-pound brown that was caught in the lake by a guy, a brown trout specialist. He was out there pulling big plugs, and he got a big fish. And I've seen some epic marks in the lake. But I've never caught anything bigger than about 5 pounds and about 19 inches on the rainbow side of things. But the fishery's prolific. There are a lot of trout in there. I've seldom gone there and got skunked. Most of the time I have enough fish for a limit. And those fish are just awesome. They're awesome eating fish. They have pink meat. They put up a good fight. Good stuff. It's near the Sierra Crest. Got to watch out for wind. Can get windy there, but it's a fairly small lake. There are 2 launch ramps. There's never a floating dock. There's 1 launch ramp on the south side. That's the bigger, more popular ramp. There's a smaller ramp that I prefer to use for my kayak on the north shore towards the headwaters of the lake. It's a great lake for small craft, small tin boats, canoes, kayaks, float tubes, stuff like that. You'll feel right at home. If you're a bank angler, don't despair. I've always caught trout there off the bank. Power bait works for the rainbows, salmon eggs, but my number 1 choice is an inflated worm or a worm drifted under a bobber. And you can cast too. Castmasters work, cripple lures work, stuff like that works. In terms of trolling lures, I've caught a lot of fish there on spoons, speedy shiners, humdingers, castmasters, stuff like that. Small minnow plugs, the Yozuri L minnows, small rebels, rapalas, all that stuff works. And Arctic fox trolling flies work very well there. If you just want to target rainbows, Berkeley grubs work very well, as do, the old standby, a threaded crawler behind some blades. That's probably the number 1 thing that's used there. Guys take that out there, they catch a mixed limit of rainbows and browns, take them back to camp and cook them, and they're happy. Let's talk about the camping there. There are several big campgrounds around the lake. They're fairly primitive. There's running water available. Most of them have vault toilets. The surroundings are awesome. It's quiet. Even though you're only 36 miles from Forest Hill, it feels like you are in the middle of nowhere. Lots of bears there. Keep your food locked up. There are lots of bears there. They're not vicious or mean, but they love a Hershey bar when they can get one. So keep your food locked up. Beyond that, there's trails, there's motorcycle riding, there's hiking, there's biking. Biking's very popular there, so is motorcycle riding. I see a lot of people out there that ride their motorcycles out from Forest Hill. They'll grab lunch, either going or coming from the lake. It's very picturesque. The area burned a number of years ago. It's dominated by big granite spires, dark timber. It's the High Sierras. It's beautiful. If you've never been to French Meadows Reservoir, put it on your list of places to go. You're going to catch some trout. You're going to have a good time. And if you can stay overnight or over for a couple nights, you're just going to have a great experience. It's a great place to go. It's kind of off the beaten path. The lake was first formed in the 60s. The campgrounds were made just after that. And for locals here in the Forest Hill area, it's one of the places we really like to go. But I would encourage you to go there no matter where you're coming from. You're going to have a good time. You're going to catch some trout, and you're going to leave with a smile on your face. Anyway, that's our destination for this week, French Meadows Reservoir in the Tahoe National Forest. Be there or be square. You'll have some fun.